Today's Traveler, Marketing with Agility to a Moving Target. It's made possible by our great partners at Zeta Global. So it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome Zeta Global Chief Marketing Officer, Crystal Eastman, to the virtual stage. Crystal, welcome to Brandweek.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And I also want to echo your kudos to Gabrielle. Gabrielle, you are so much more than the girl from Bring It On. Thank you so much for such a great talk. As mentioned, I'm Crystal Eastman, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Zeta Global, a marketing technology company that helps some of the world's best brands grow through more insightful and impactful connections with consumers. And I'm so pleased today to be able to welcome one of our most forward-thinking customers, Steve Fitzgerald, who is the VP of Digital Commerce and Distribution for G6, the parent company behind Motel 6 and Studio 6. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Crystal. Great to be here and great to see all of the audience. Well, not really see, but be in front of a large audience anyway. And you're absolutely right. We're going to have to really push ourselves to be as inspirational as that message we just heard. It's fantastic.
Let's pep it up. So Steve, you have had such a storied career, across the travel and hospitality space, working for some of the most innovative brands like Hilton and Travelocity prior to joining G6. So it's incredible to be sitting here with you today to discuss your growth story over the past year, when generally the travel industry globally has been on pause, and yet you and your team at G6 have found out a way to accelerate growth. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's not just really us, really, it's our customers. The cool part is Motel 6 customers have been, always will be, important people that keep the economy running. So we work with first responders, traveling medical teams last year particularly, maintenance crews, truck drivers, essentially the people that keep the lights on, if you will, and the economy operational for all of us are our customer base. And that really was a privilege to have that group of audience with us, stay with us at our properties, but also it kept us afloat, if you will, during a very difficult time for the rest of the industry.
Yeah, and certainly both consumer and traveler confidence, whether you were an essential worker or not, was an evolving thing, as the pandemic unfolded, and even through today, where our minds are changing very rapidly with new information. How did knowing your customers well help you serve them, during this very difficult time?
Yeah, so a couple of things, a couple of thoughts around that area. One of them is, obviously moving into 2020, we halted most of our top of funnel activities. So TV, radio, sports sponsorships obviously went by the wayside. We kept digital in place, albeit at a lower level. We used website tagging and data analysis to kind of understand how people were behaving in this pandemic time period differently from the year before. And what we learned was customers are traveling shorter distances, typically. They're driving instead of flying. They're taking shorter length of trips. So what used to be a 2-day stay was now an overnight stay in many cases. Days to arrival was shrinking on a massive scale. So people often booked their hotel rooms, weeks out in a high demand period. We were looking at a day ahead of time in the middle of the pandemic, greatly collapsed booking lead time. And people were really navigating, we learned, to places with exterior entrances. That was a big deal because they could drive up to the hotel, park their car, and walk into the room without going through a lobby, without passing someone in a hallway. And that was really a key learning that we undertook that really helped us during this time period. So we were better bidders, if you will, digitally, because of that knowledge base we amassed quickly during the process.
Yeah, you mentioned daily, data lookouts to understand how traveler behavior was changing. How were you able to quickly incorporate the needs that you were finding were going to be important for travelers, the next day, the day after that, into your end-to-end marketing curriculum?
Yeah, we had to scramble pretty quickly, obviously. And one of the key things that really most hotel chains did, and I think the airlines did as well, was put together very quickly clean programs to make sure that customers knew that rooms were thoroughly clean, things were sanitized, check-in was as contactless as possible. I mean, you rewind the clock to 15 months ago, there was a lot of concern that COVID was surface transferred. We really didn't understand it. And so the whole cleanliness concept, scrubbing, cleaning things down, sanitizing was super important. That went on the website, that went into our advertising. We frankly continue to this day, it still ranks relatively high in terms of the attributes people are looking for online. So I think that was a key part of what we did. And then the other thing we realized was there was a lot of cancellations, more so than normal as customers perhaps change their mind at the last minute. So we had to adjust our bidding strategy to account for the fact that more customers than anticipated were going to fall through for a given day. And the bidding strategy became much more short-term oriented as part of that process.
Absolutely. And so, you mentioned, that G6 has always, served, the worker community and been, part of the lifeblood, of the country's labor force. But as we shifted to, really the essential workers, what types of needs did you find that, the nurse population had that wasn't normally, your bread and butter, and how did you have to make adjustments to make sure that their needs were met?
Yeah, so great point. So what we learned pretty quickly, and our CEO, Rob Pulaski, challenged us to this Pulaski challenged us to this point, which is we learned pretty quickly there was no resource right away for a traveling medical worker, emergency medical crews, first responders. Where do I go to find a hotel that's open? Where do I go to find a hotel that wants my business? Where do I go to find one that has the type of product that I want, i.e. exterior rooms? We pretty quickly created our own website, if you will, and really showed what we have available for first responders in a very pivoted to a quick effort, put this up within weeks. It became a resource for really travelers all over the country who were looking for accommodations and a place to stay that met their requirements. So that was one way that we acted pretty quickly on the opportunity, frankly.
Fantastic. And so some of the unique booking behaviors that you mentioned earlier are things that seem to be persisting over time. Certainly some of the ways we all overreacted in the beginning, we've settled in and, learned, how to deal with things. But certainly, in my seat at Zeta, where I can observe, over 225 million consumers' behavior on the web and see how they're making decisions, I see that the booking window is still radically shortened from what it was before. And now there's a tremendous amount of activity of people booking same week, a family of 4, a family of 6 traveling same week. This sort of thing was unheard of, in the year before the pandemic. And we're also seeing a lot of interesting behavior with travel stacking, where people are trying to de-risk their family trip by making 4 trips because, there's forgiving cancellation policies and the rules are changing internationally.
Please don't do that, by the way, those of you in the audience, but keep going.
Yeah, and so, how are you seeing this behavior evolve? And then which of these things do you think will be kind of semi-permanent behavior changes where, fundamentally, travelers are just thinking about how they make decisions differently?
Yeah, so you're right, there's been some radical changes. So what we've learned in the industry really over the last 20 or 30 years, and this varies from different economic times, is that when times are tough, when there's uncertainty, people wait to book till the last minute. So that booking lead time shortens dramatically. It's a phenomenon that's always been around. It was obviously around on a massive scale, in 2020. So consumers wait to book, and then they stay for a shorter time period in times of uncertainty. So those are two key components. Now, one thing we noticed in the early summertime, think about May or June timeframe as an example, is that if you just rewind the clock a short 3 or 4 months, COVID was on the wane, it appeared. The Delta variant had yet to take effect. And so consumers were emboldened to travel for the first time in really 16 to 18 months. And we saw a surge in travel booking. So rates went up, whether you're an airline or whether you're a hotel, you're charging more. We also noticed that the length of stay expanded again. People were staying 2 nights instead of 1 on average, and the booking lead time expanded. So the other side of the coin is, in tough economic times, when there's uncertainty both on the demand side with consumers and on the supply side, the rules that make you want to book earlier in time go away. And so a great example, anyone who's on this webinar, search a major carrier. I'm not going to call one out, but let's say the dominant carrier in Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and look for a trip to Chicago next week, or look for a trip to Orlando, or look for a trip to Miami or LA or LGA as an example. You'll find $49 rates in many cases. So what's happening is demand now with the COVID resurgence, with leisure travel on the wane, and with business travel because of school, and with business travel not where it was in 2019, there's an excess of capacity again in many parts of the system. And so, I'm not an airline revenue manager, but I think at the rate we're going, $49 rates are not sustainable. Planes will have to be parked again, perhaps at some point. And we're going to go into a period of greater uncertainty again in many parts of the travel industry. Now, I think that'll work its way through over the next quarter or so. but there was quite a distortion caused by that early summer travel surge, if you will. And then a lot of these sort of in the pandemic behaviors from a travel standpoint are coming back into play again.
Certainly. So, I recently read a study from the Travel Association that was very much focusing on those people, the people who traveled during the summer. They're calling them resilient travelers, the ones that were first brave enough, to jump back out there. And they're predicting that segment in particular is going to return to higher travel levels than even they had in 2019. So they're just really pent up, and they've already, broken through on their practice trips, and they'll be traveling, no matter what in 2022. How are you thinking about that segment, if at all, as part of your marketing strategy?
Yeah, I think they will. We have an opportunity to test that. It's called the holidays. They're coming up pretty shortly. And so we're actually seeing some signs of holiday booking occurring now, which is nice. So we're cautiously optimistic moving through the end of the year into Q1 next year that a lot of those travelers will come back out again. I mean, look, for better or worse, the economy, all of us travelers are sort of equalizing and renormalizing to what will be the new normal. And I think the new normal will look like 2019 again at some point. Whether that happens in 2023, 2024, to be determined. But these things will work. These shocks, if you will work into the system. We are confident about that.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier that you dialed everything down from marketing investments in 2020. Sounds like you're firing up your engines again.
Yeah. So back rewinding to June, we fired up cable TV again. We got back into broadcast radio. We did more top of the funnel exercises. So YouTube, on television, both connected TV and OTT, Pandora, social media outreach again. We have a great partnership with AARP that worked out really well for us. So those things started up, and then the thing happened. The demand got so strong for our products, we actually dialed back again a little bit on top of the funnel activity, and frankly on bottom of the funnel activity in digital marketing, because we were getting a lot of customers. And you might recall, we still have a situation where many parts of the economy have a labor shortage. And so we were concerned that we were piling too many customers into effectively a difficult environment for our hotels to operate. So we had to kind of restrike that balance and pull back a little bit, which was the story of the last 60 days.
Well, Steve, that's certainly a very good problem to have. I'm sure all of the marketers on this call are very excited and in some cases jealous about what you just said. So well done. One thing that your team, has been exceptional at over the past year is welcoming in new customers to your franchise, over this past 15 months, all these different, audiences that were not, prior, Motel 6 stayers. As you move into 2022 and you're having to think about capacity, how are you balancing focus on new customer acquisition with building loyalty and driving repeat business from all of these new entrants to the Motel 6 family?
Yeah, so you're right about new entrants. So the vast majority of our customers, close to 70% of our customers, walk in the door every day and say, do you have a room? Think about our locations on highways and interstates, major driveways. Most of our customers drive. So we do have the ability to capture a new customer frequently. What we've been able to do with Zeta, though, with the customer data platform solution with Zeta, is to take that consumer, those new consumers that are now walking into our doors, and kind of integrating that with a view that we have the customers who are to book, and we're able to identify audiences pretty quickly that we can explore in terms of follow-on marketing. So, and then one of the things that we do, with your team, as is we suppress customers who are likely to buy, and really aim our dollars for those that are acquisition oriented, which is super helpful. We're getting great results from Sojourn display remarketing. That's worked very well for us as well. And we've got intender audiences, Zeta and Adara working together as an example to identify auctions we weren't able to participate in and we can get involved in now. That's been super beneficial for us.
That's fantastic to hear. And then, aside from the direct marketing plan, you mentioned a number of service level changes that you and your team made at the beginning of the pandemic to help meet customers' needs. And how are you planning to evolve permanently any of the services provided on site, across your brands, signifying that you think traveler behavior has fundamentally changed, or expectations have fundamentally changed?
Well, I think expectations will have to fundamentally change in many of our cases. So The industry is pressed for labor, but also if you think about it, regardless of the hotel you stay at, whether it's a major brand or whether it's an economy brand, you don't change your sheets at home every day. You're not going to see them change every day at the hotel. You're not going to get the same towels you already don't pretty much get towel and refurnished. My point is, housekeeping services expectations will be changed. People will need to become accustomed to the fact that housekeeping is going to be different moving forward. It may be every 2 or 3 days, maybe on demand. If you want to pay for a refresh, you can pay for it, as opposed to just expecting it as part of the overall package of services. And the other key component is food service. Restaurants have always been, not that we have any at G6, but the general Motel 6 or the general industry, restaurants have been a loss leader for many hotels. They were offered service to their customers, but they didn't ever really make a profit. And so there's huge economic incentives for those hotel owners and franchise companies to make restaurants go away. That includes room service. So those of you that like a elaborate breakfast delivered by room service, you may have to change your expectation, unless you're staying at the very top of the chain scales.
Okay, well, we only have time for one more question, Steve. So I'm dying to know, where are you going to travel to first when you're ready, to get back on the road for some leisure travel?
I look forward to getting back in the conference circuit again. I look forward to meeting peers and colleagues, in the field and across the country. Now, just coincidentally, the first couple ones I'll attend will be here in Dallas, so I don't have to travel for those. But I do look forward to seeing all my friends and associates and our partners all over the country, basically, the next 3 or 4 months.
Fantastic. Well, I'll see you at Cannes next year.
Yeah.
I hope. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Steve. I'll turn it back over to the studio now.
Thanks, Crystal.
Crystal, Steve, great job. Let's take a quick look at your takeaways.
Sure. So, as Steve explained how his team drove success, it was very important for him to be driving actionable data at the identity level every step of the way, so they can meet each customer's individual needs, both at the point of acquisition and at servicing. Omni-channel strategies are completely required to drive growth with today's customer buying journal. You heard Steve talk about, CTV, display, email. It's all important because that's where our customers are connected. And consumers trust brands that show up authentically and consistently. If they showed up to a clean room one day and not the second day, they wouldn't be back. That's important that you put forward what you stand for and then you fulfill on that promise.
Great advice and a great end to a great session, Crystal, Steve, and thank you so much. We really appreciate your perspective today.